Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to another From Basic to Complete. Now, for this video, we're going to be going over Vanar. Now, from the last video, I didn't actually include a deck that you can just make with basic cards. I have made one for this video. I'm going to show it on screen for a bit, but I'm not really going to go over it much because honestly, you'll only be using a basic deck for 1 or 2 days, or even less than that. And you can just get away with the starter decks anyway, so it's not really something that I need to focus on. Now, the deck we're trying to build up for this particular video is Mech Vanar. Now, I was thinking about doing just a deck tech for this, but it's a pretty common deck, so instead I'm going to kind of use this format to just talk about how you build up the deck, since it is pretty much the core of Vanar decks at the moment. Anyway, so first things first, let's go over the basic deck just quickly. Now, the thing about basic decks, now these will all be in the description with the spirit cost to make them. The thing about basic decks is you often don't have a lot of options, so there's some really strange stuff in here, like, you know, some 6-drop golems, and Avalanche is not that odd, but things like Veil Hunter, just because Frostfire is in the deck. Flash Freeze. So there's some odd stuff, but you will definitely get commons very, very quickly, and this is the kind of list which you should be looking at if you're starting up Duelist, like at the moment, like right now. Anyway, so onto the Pauper deck. Now this is just including commons. So first things first, we'll go through card by card. So we'll go Aspect of the Fox. Now Aspect of the Fox is not a bad card. The transformation does deal with big stuff. It's particularly good in this list because there are 2 Dancing Blades and 2 Death Blighters in the deck, and that's a 6 mana combo to kill anything in the game, and a 7 mana combo to AoE and then kill whatever big creature is there as well. So 3 Aspect, 3 Chromatic Cold, used to be Mana Burn in Magmar, is now just Chromatic Cold, which is just as good and is amazing. The silence, the damage, it's one of the best cards in Vanar. Crystal Cloaker, the 2-drop of choice. You want to try and get this as a 4-3 if possible. 2 mana 2-3 isn't bad, but getting it as a 4-3 is really, really good. It's like Windblade, add out to that point from Lionar, which is really impressive. Not as good, but still a very, very good card. Next, we've got Hailstone Prison. One of the other reasons to play Vanar, the bounce on 2 mana will often just be a removal spell, and tempo matters a lot more than card advantage in this game. As far as removing things goes, if you bounce something when they have 6 cards in hand, it actually destroys the card completely, and it doesn't trigger Dying Wish, so that's a pretty big deal. It also doesn't trigger Death for Keeper, which is also a pretty big deal as far as I know. I don't think it triggers Death for Keeper. Yeah, I don't think it does. Anyway, it doesn't trigger Dying Wish. But anyway, so on to Healing Mystic, as it doesn't want to highlight. Healing Mystic is the basic 2-drop 2-3 that will be played in pretty much everything, and is a basic card, and you'll be expecting to see this a lot. Something of note is that you can use this to heal your own stuff instead of your hero, which is pretty big in some situations, although often this will be just healing your own face to deal with burn. Next, we got Hearth Sister. Hearth Sister is basically the most insane magnetize ever. So you get to play it anywhere on the map, and then either teleport his guy close to you or teleport your guy close to him. Now, in the basic Vanar deck, you'll probably be teleporting stuff close to you instead of switching your own things. But in the final Mech version, this often is used to switch Headhunters. But don't be afraid to use this on your opponent's stuff, because it is a very big tempo play to switch their 4-drop next to your hero and then kill it with like a 2-drop in your hero, and then they have to kill the Hearth Sister, and it's just massive tempo. Next, we got Jaxi. Jaxi is one of the best 2-drops that you can possibly play with. The other option is Primus Fist, if you've got a couple of those. They're pretty close. Jaxi is slightly more powerful, in my opinion, but if you have Primus Fist and you don't have Jaxi, then go ahead and throw those in, or just try them out if you want to. Now, next we got Cryogenesis. Cryogenesis is just a 2-of, it's just a removal spell, lets you get rid of those slightly bigger threats that you don't really want to deal with, and it does always draw you a 2-drop in this particular deck. So you can just go 5 mana, Cryogenesis 2-drop. It does work. It's not particularly strong, but it's serviceable. Fenrir Warmaster, another core card for Vanar. The effective 9 stats on a 3-drop is just insane. It's 9 stats because they both have 3 attack, so it's like a 3/6 with 2. It's like a 3/6 over 2 bodies, which is pretty good. It's pretty good. And it's always going to be good. It often gets silenced, but it's a 3-drop, so if you're playing against another Vanar player and they use Chromatic Cold on this and attack with the general, you're only down 1 mana, and then they don't have one of the really powerful removal spells, and they need to have the general in range. Next, we've got the sort of rush damage from hand package here. We've got Tiger, which can deal 3 without involving your general, and has very long reach against ranged creatures because you can move your general forward, play the Tiger diagonal in front of you, and then move again, so you've actually moved 5 spaces and then can attack the 6th. The range is massive on rush creatures. And then you got Snowpiercer, which is more powerful. It hits for 5 instead of 3, and you only have to use your general to do it. The problem is it doesn't have as much reach, but they're roughly the same power-wise. Then onto the 4-drop, Hailstone Golem is what we've got for the 4-drops. There aren't any 4-drops really you can use from Vanar as far as basic stuff goes. I mean, if we go through here, there's Razorback, but that's rare, and Voice is legendary. So you're kind of restricted on the 4-drops as far as that's concerned. So you just have the Golem. It is one of the weaknesses of the budget Vanar decks. Then, as I mentioned earlier, we've got Dancing Blades. It's a tempo 5-drop and is incredibly good with Aspect of the Fox if you draw it later than when you have 5 mana. Just watch that you play it on the right side. It always does damage in front of it, and it's always facing the same way. So it always deals damage in front of it, and it will kill your own stuff. I have never personally killed my own stuff because I don't play Dancing Blades unless I can kill something most of the time, or if I can't kill something, it's usually just a vanilla 4/6. But I do know people that have accidentally killed their stuff, and yeah, it's a bit embarrassing to lose the game because you killed your own guy. Lastly, we've got Deathblighter, one of the most underestimated cards in the entire game. I've been playing it and constructed a little bit in other decks, primarily Abyssian, but you don't have access to AoE really in Vanar at all, so something like this is quite handy when you're trying to keep up on board with slightly less powerful cards in general. It also works very well with Aspect of the Fox, similar to Dancing Blades. Alright, now after you go through the sort of commons thing, you'll find that you can build mechs for next to nothing. It's kind of impressive. Every single card in the original mechs deck, besides just the activator, Spirit of the Wind, this is before patch. Before the patch, pretty much everything apart from Spirit of the Wind was rare or less, so you can build a functioning mech deck for a very small amount of spirit. Now, we'll just cover the new cards. I mean, we still got Chromatic Cold. Crystal Cloaker is not a 3-of, but it's just to increase your 2-drop count. Prison, Jaxi, Healing Mystic still here, an extra Hearth Sister, or I think it's the same count of Hearth Sisters. Anyway. And then besides that, you've got Fenrir Warmaster, still got the Dancing Blades for the tempo. The new cards are the mechs, so we've got Helm of Mechazor as the 1-drop, and then we've got Wings of Mechazor as the 2-drop, 1/4. The stats are surprisingly irrelevant, whereas the stats on Helm are not so much. It's just supposed to be a 1-drop that can actually help you trade in a lot of situations. If you play it away from their general, you can use it to help kill their 2-drop. Wings of Mechazor is pretty good at killing 2/3s with your hero, and you can do some really obnoxious stuff going first, where you can put it right in front of their mana globe, and then they can't take it, and you can take it if the Wings lives, and most of the time it does. So you get some really powerful turns with that, and you deny your opponent the power turns. Cannon of Mechazor, 2/2 ranged, is pretty powerful, honestly. Both 3-drop mechs have decent stats and abilities. So the 2/2 range is pretty powerful. It's not easy to deal with for a lot of decks, and works really well with Razorback later on. Then we've got Sword of Mechazor, which is the last mech, 3 mana 3/3. And it's got the Frenzy, which is sometimes relevant, although most of the time it's just 3/3 because they always kill it. But Frenzy does come up, and it means that if they can't deal with it, it deals massive damage, so they have to focus it. Now, these 4 cards all have progress Mechazor by 20%. Mechazor is a 8/8 with airdrop that you play the final mech and then you target where you want the Mechazor. And it's an 8/8 with ranged, airdrop, and frenzy. And then it also can't be targeted by spells. So they basically need a silence. And it's the main win condition in this deck. Now, once you get past the budget versions, it's easier to win the game, even if they deal with Mechazor, which is possible with like a Crossbone since it has ranged, or if they mana burn it and then they somehow deal with it. That's kind of detrimental for this deck. That's mostly what the final version of the deck addresses, is the weakness of losing your Mechazor. Then besides that, we've got Emerald Rejuvenator, staple in every single deck I can think of, apart from Songhai, I guess. 4/4 for 4 isn't 4/4 for 4 isn't bad, and also it restores 4. So many 4s on this card. Yeah, restoring 4 life is actually pretty big. It doesn't look like a lot, but you'd be amazed at how much work this does, and it's an amazing card to craft because it fits in almost every deck. So I would highly recommend crafting this early on if you're getting into the game. Lastly, we've got the 2 Razorback as the new addition. This is a bit clunky as a 3-of because it's not the best 4-drop. However, it does buff all your stuff. You can let Razorbacks just go rampant in some cases. It does work very, very well with Cannon of Mechazor and Sword of Mechazor specifically. Simply because, and also Jaxi by extension, simply because you got the ranged and then the frenzy. It's also pretty good the turn after you get your Mechazor, because then it can attack for 10, and that's usually enough just to close out the game immediately. So Razorback is very, very powerful. It's a 2-of because it's a bit clunky as a 3-of. Very powerful card though. And lastly, we still have the Dancing Blades as the tempo 5-drop. So anyway, that is the budget mech list. Moving on to the completed mech list. There are a total of 5 epics and 3 legendaries in this deck. Now, when we get to the end of this list, I will talk a bit about what to substitute the keepers for, because those are quite expensive, although they're not detrimental to craft right now, because it is highly likely that they will get nerfed, and they're played in almost everything, which means that you will get your spirit back immediately as soon as they're changed. So it's definitely a legendary to craft at the moment. So anyway, the 3 cards that are in the deck in the final version are Headhunter. Now, Headhunter is replacing the Healing Mystic here. Very powerful 2-drop. In this deck especially, all of the mechs have Opening Gambit. And you also have Hearth Sister, which can swap it into range and attack. That's the main combo with Hearth Sister. You play Headhunter. If it lives the turn, you play Hearth Sister. You play like 2 mechs, or maybe a Razorback, and then you just hit them in the face with Headhunter for 7 or 9. So that's the main combo that makes Headhunter insane, but they have to deal with it because it will hit for 5, pretty much guaranteed, and sometimes for more on a 2-drop. So they have to deal with it or silence it, and it's an alternate win condition when your Mechazor dies. Now, besides that, we've got 2 Spirit of the Wild. Now, this is mostly used with Mechazor because with 7 mana, for instance, if you're at 4 stacks on the mechs, you can play a Cannon of Mechazor on his side, and then put down the Mechazor and play Spirit of the Wild and hit him for 10, because they activate immediately. You can also use this for some crazy lethals with Razorback. Play Razorback if you're, like, you want to try and force your opponent onto their side. So you play Razorback, and then you attack with everything, activate again, attack with everything, and that's probably enough to win. It is very situational, though, but you do want 1 every game. I think you want 1 every game, but not in every situation. So 2-of, not 3-of. Now, the last card in the deck that is new is the Keeper of Value, or Keeper of the Veil. Now, Keeper of the Veil is almost an alternate way of winning in this deck because it offers so many stats, and over 2 bodies is actually good because of Razorback. You can also use this with Spirit of the Wild on 9 mana, which most games don't get to 9 mana in the current metagame, but if you do get to 9 mana, then you can play Keeper plus Spirit. Comes up every so often, and it just will usually resurrect a 2/3 or 3/3. That's resurrecting Fenrir Warmaster is the best out of anything in the deck. But you usually resurrect a 2/2, maybe a 3/3, but that's fine. That's all you need on curve. You play Keeper on curve, you keep the pressure up, and it lets you go Keeper into double mech the turn afterwards, and that will usually get your Mechazor. So Keeper is an incredibly good card. Now, as far as substitutions goes for Keeper, what you can do is you can try a couple. I mean, you can still play your Nasty Swords if you like. You can also try a third Razorback, although in my experience that's a bit clunky. Some people have been playing Frosthorn Rhino, but I'm not so sure about that because you can get the 14 damage out of it with Spirit of the Wild immediately. But it's a bit sketchy. It does act as a finisher, but it's nowhere near as good on curve. But yeah, Frosthorn Rhino is a possible substitute, although at the moment I think that Keeper is one of those cards that it's incredibly safe to craft because it fits in almost every deck, and also will probably get nerfed, which means you just get your spirit back. But anyway, so that's my entire from basic to complete of mechs for Vanar. As I said, I'll put the lists in the description with their spirit costs as well. Now, the next video for me is probably going to be a deck tech for Abyssian. It won't be a from basic to complete because it's a strange Abyssian deck. I'm going to be doing this type of video for decks that are well known and sort of more going over how to construct them and how to craft to get towards that deck. Whereas with some of the stranger decks I build, I'll just do a deck tech on them because I think it's a bit more interesting. And in those videos, I'll play a couple games with the deck as well, because there aren't any resources out there covering that deck. Whereas in the case of things like Mech Vanar, there's resources everywhere. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below if you want to ask any questions about the Mech deck that I showcased. But as now, it's been Jotto, signing off.